there the second time, or
yes, the second time.
The second time. The second time, Elias looked broken. He did not want to talk to us because he was tired, and he was tired of all the publicity, and he told the wife that nothing will come out of it. And he said he is talking about it. He had so much high expectation the very first time that we came, thinking that when the story hits the media, the police service would come out and then they would help. They would come and even apologize to him and tell him that they are sorry, and tell him that, okay, we want to help you in this way, in a way. But nothing of that sort happened, and so he kept crying and he didn't want to talk. And eventually he said he gives everything to God, that he was shot in the head and the police is not minding him. And then he started crying. So the wife also chipped in and said, well, my husband is saying that he wants to give it to God, but I know deeply within him that he does not want the case to go, because he cries every night. Every night he sheds tears. He would go on, and then weep throughout the night, reminding him that was not how.
Jojo, please reposition yourself. It's difficult to hear you.
Okay. Is it better now?
It's much better now.
Yes. And the wife, Deborah, said the husband is saying that he wants the case to just die, but in his heart of heart, she knows that the husband really wants the case pursued, because he cries every night. He weeps, and then he will keep talking and talking. He will be in a soliloquy and say, why him? Why did the police shoot him that very day?
But why did they shoot him, Jojo? Let's go back to that day. What actually happened?
According to him, he heard disturbance in the community. He went there to find out what had happened, and then he saw the police engaging his brother-in-law. So he went there to find out. He was not the only person. Many people were around him, surrounded the police to plead that, okay, you're arresting him. What has he done? Can you tell me exactly what he has done? We beg you. Can we sit down with the chiefs? There are leaders in this community. Let's talk about it. And then before he could remember, a gun shots had been fired straight into his head, and then he fell. And he said he remembered the policeman who shot him. The policeman said, and I quote in P, Otria sound. To it, you are a loudmouth. You see that we have gotten you. So that is the memory that he carried when he was shot. And so the last time I interviewed him, he kept saying it. He repeated it several times. That was all that he kept saying as he continued to drew saliva. And then he kept shaking his head, and then tears started running. And so it's a memory that he carries with him every day. And every day he recounts how the police shot him, how come the police shot him, what did he really do. And so that is a memory that haunts him every day.
Now, since May, when this happened, has anyone from the police contacted him at all?
Yes, when he was discharged from the hospital, what happened? The PIPs went there. According to the family, 2 PIPs officials came and then spoke to them and said, "Oh, they came to take pictures and then of his head and how paralyzed he was." And then they told him that they would come and investigate, like properly. They would come for further investigation, and then they would come and alert him and tell him the state of the case. And that was somewhere around September, August, September. That is what they recall. But since that time, no one has come to see them, and so every day their doors open, hoping that the police will walk in and talk to them.
So
tell
since
them state of the case. But the family has been visiting the police headquarters. They have written letters. They keep going there, and they keep saying that, keep pleading with the police to investigate, but nothing has come out of it. And we found out the story somewhere in September. So September, we've been following, interviewing. Then we wrote we wrote letters to, because I quite remember when As If Weren't Human documentary was before it aired,
Yeah.
we decided to get the side of the police, and so we show them bits of the documentary to tell them that this is what has happened. We want confirmation, and for 2 weeks we waited for the police to come, and then we aired the documentary. And I remember when we aired the documentary on Hotline, we tried getting the police to tell their side of the story, but they did not tell their side of the story. And since then, the family has been waiting. The police service has been quiet, and the family is hurting.
Wow. So just to be clear, since September, when you first made contact with the police and when you were putting together this documentary, you have not heard, or Elias has not heard from the police?
Exactly. The documentary aired in November. So we gave them enough time to react to the story. And then in November, we promote the story, kept promoting the story, kept saying that the story had, because this is a story that we have shown and we've played on radio several times. And then every time we play the story, we keep saying that the police service has decided to keep quiet. And it looks like that is exactly what they're doing, to just keep quiet, hoping that the story would just slide. But this is a story that is so important that we want to follow up to its logical conclusion, because the family is hurting, and for now, they're not even believing in democratic structures. They're saying that, if we claim that we are a democracy, we claim that we have a system, something should be done. And that is the reason why we keep following up on the story, hoping that one day the police will come out and say that we want to investigate, we want to give this family closure.
We understand his wife has been delivered of a baby.
Yes. He was shot when the wife was 3 or 4 months pregnant. And the last time we interviewed the wife was 4, had a fresh baby, and she delivered early this year. And what is interesting, if you recall in the video, when I was interviewing the wife, she started crying, and you'd see a daughter. They have a daughter, 2 years, walk up to the mother and wipe her tears, because the daughter didn't know what was happening. The very first time, the daughter was jumping over the father, was running to hug the father, but the father could not hug her because, he was paralyzed. So that memory, looking at the daughter running to him and then not being able to carry the daughter, broke him down, and then he started crying more, and saying that, he plays with the daughter, carries the daughter every time. Now he cannot get the opportunity to do that. And then, secondly, that very day, when we're talking to the mother, that is the wife, the girl just walked up to the mother crying, and then asked, "Why are you crying?" And then start wiping the tears from the mother's face. It is such, the woman is not working. It is the extended family that is helping, and they don't have money. And I've told us that early in the time when they were going to the hospital, many times they would have some small money for the therapy, so the husband could sit very well, and then he was improving. But since the second baby came, other responsibilities. Now the husband is bedridden. Like he cannot he can't even manage to sit up, and so you could see that he is slumped into that mood again, where because they need physiotherapy to survive, to strengthen his muscles, and see whether maybe something he could be salvaged. But you could see that nothing is happening, and so it's like just slowly watching a light dim from the man, where his light is dimming slowly. There's nothing that he can do about it.
Terrible picture that is being painted for us here, Jojo. So from what you're telling us, this woman and the children are basically surviving on handouts.
Handouts, family, somebody visiting them, and then walking to them to just give them something small, maybe 5 CDs, 10 CDs. And I remember there was this pastor who watched the story from London and came to Ghana and said he wanted to see them. So I took them to see the family. And that very day they gave them something small. And she said, the lady started crying and said, I was praying that today somebody should just come to this house and give us something. And then somebody just walked in. And then I walked in with the pastor to give them some money. And so they really need money. They need something. They need some social support. They need money to get them going.
Thank you very much, Jojo.
Thank you too, Daniel.
This is for that little child with no father. For that man that doesn't have a place to stay. For that little boy living with AIDS. Can I tell you a story? You can lean on me.
So Jojo Kobna is the voice behind the documentary we aired in November, As If We Weren't Humans. What he did then was chronicle a number of people who had been abused by law enforcement agencies, not just the police, but security agencies, I should say, by the army as well. What he did just now was zero in on one of the victims who has received no support, who we have no updates as to the investigations of the person who shot him. This person is Elias Ajete Anum, a full-grown man who was able to work and support his family, but now cannot even pick up his daughter. He's not even physically capable of speaking audibly. It robs me in so many ways, Raymond, but the sad part, Raymond, is that this is not a strange story.
Yes. In fact, to be fair, when I wake up every morning, it's things like this I pray to God never happens to me. Because how you should be able to handle this and how this family has coped is of tremendous impact on virtually everybody that understands that you have a role to play in your family. This man is virtually incapable of doing things that he was supposed to be doing by doing nothing wrong. He didn't steal anything. He didn't beat anybody. He didn't commit any crime. The only thing that he didn't contribute to in any way was just stepping out of his own home. It's a very terrible story. Unfortunately, we have so many of them in this country. And sometimes you ask yourself whether we are in a jungle. The law, the right institutions, they seem to only apply to a few people, the prominent, the capable. The ordinary Ghanaian who is on the other side of the social contract never seems to be a beneficiary of that system. So we would have expected that this gentleman, first and foremost, gets justice. 2, there's a system in place that takes care of him, takes care of the family, makes sure that his virtual absence, and this is like virtual absence, he can speak well, he can't do the things that a man will do for his family and all of that, are all not let go. But why? I've not heard any police officer being jailed for this. I've not heard even being put before court. At least let's try and see whether we can get justice for them. We've not seen those things happening. So it encourages more people to be trigger happy, to do their things anyhow, to take the law into their own hands. The people who are supposed to protect you, the ones who become the people who are perpetrating the crime against you. And the Ghanaian police set up in such a way that it's as if when they punish one of their own, they are telling the world that their institution has collapsed. They seem to be extremely slow in exacting justice for people.
Very protective.
Yes, and it's as if they pay themselves. They are not paid by the taxpayer. It's as if they work for themselves. It's as if some clique of a sort whose ultimate responsibility is to protect their own and not the larger society. So it makes you... It actually fights against your citizenship in a way that you struggle to believe in this state.
I want to know how many of these cases are happening that we are overlooking. Just cases of brutality against citizens by security agencies. But anymore, again, I see the reaction. I'm having people text me, we want to help this person. People are texting on the console, we want to help this person. But the question that we are asking anymore is that beyond helping this person, should we not be working towards making a system so that things like this don't happen in the first place?
So I'm sitting here and I'm trying to figure out what it is that goes on in the mind of a man holding the gun that makes him so immersed in the power that he thinks that he has, that he can point this gun to another human being's head and shoot him and say, loosely translated from Tree as Jojo reported, you have mouth, well, now we've shut you up. I mean, what kind of person does that to another person? And it brings me back to this point that I made a few months ago when we talked about the police and the mental health processes and evaluation that the people who are holding guns go through. It brings me back to are they evaluated every quarter? What kind of mindsets do they have? What kind of mental health states are they in? Because the thing is, and I was with a friend yesterday and he said, if I lived in Ghana, I wouldn't own a gun because there's so many things that would provoke you to reach out and just do something stupid. I have another friend who owns guns and he said to me so many times that I don't take my gun out, I keep it at home because there's a certain sort of what is it? I'm trying to find the word, a headiness that comes when you know that you have this kind of power. And so he restrains by keeping his gun at home. The point I'm trying to make is that these police officers are licensed to hold guns. They've been trained to hold guns. But are we checking the state of their heads? Because it takes one crazy, and I mean crazy person, to put a gun to another person's head and say that I'm going to shoot you and it's just to shut you up.
Raymond, this really reminds me of the conversation we've been having about disarming, disbanding, and demobilizing militia groups. Because Enima raises the point of guns ending up in the hands of the wrong people. Now, we can all agree that it's illegal. There are 2 million handguns out there, 92% of them made locally. They are in the hands of miscreants and criminals. But should we be looking back at people in uniform?
Okay, so this conversation has been going on for some time now. It's true. There was a recent survey or so that questioned the mental state of some policemen.
Police, yeah.
Yes, and actually painted a very bleak picture that suggested that many of the people we see on the street in uniform, nicely dressed, might not be in the best state of health that we ought to be. The understanding I knew previously was that periodically people are reviewed by psychiatrists and psychologists to be able to determine whether they are in the right state of mind or not. I think that there's some power relations that we deal with in this country. People, when they get small power, feel extremely powerful. The tendency for them to abuse these powers is very high. So the police officer, if you like how they engage you, many of the police officers, especially the junior officers, I don't know, but it looks like the senior officers treat me way better than the younger officers. Yeah. If you meet the person on the street, he doesn't know you anywhere. How dare you even ask for directions to a place? Again, I've met police officers whose only instigation was to just ask me, what are you doing here? Then I stated. Then the man says, you are too known. You've encountered some in traffic where the guy asks a couple of questions. He's not getting anything to pick up a CD or so from you. Then he starts insulting you forms and indirectly and calling you names.
I mean, I was called a very insulting expression by the police just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, because you're not willing to give money because you know you've done nothing wrong. That's the kind of people that we have in our system predominantly. I'm not saying every single policeman is like that. They believe that they are not the people who are there to serve. They believe predominantly their role is to extort one, two, to lord it over you, when they've forgotten that the police stopped being a force some years ago, so many years ago, that when police elsewhere are improving in delivering services to people, they are with kids, they are doing nice things, they are helping families out. in our country,
finding cats in trees.
yes, and in our country, the predominant position of most of the people who are in uniform in this country is to lord it over you, to possibly show you that they are the ones with the power. And if you refuse to cower, you might be in big trouble, like some have found themselves dead or even gone for very poor reasons. It is that psychic, and it starts with recruitment. If you have people being recruited just because a political party believes it has to give jobs to people, if you have people being recruited because they know people in the police service, if you have people who will tell you that, I think I have a university degree and I'm qualified to be in the police. But some people of lesser qualification, lesser competence and abilities are the ones that are being recruited in the system. There's an expression in computer science, they say garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage out, yeah.
You do not expect to put garbage in the system and expect something refined out of that particular system. In any case, we know that the police training and these assistants have never made people any better off. And we know that in our police system, if the people want to be better, it's because they are innately better off. So we are very fine police officers. It's not a system that doesn't make them any better. In fact, the system fights against them being better in any way. So our structure is sometimes very confusing. The service institutions are not delivering the service. They are rather causing harm to people. And the same institution is supposed to fix the problem. Now, let's list them, Daniel. In the last 10 years or so, there are many issues that the police internally was supposed to review and get back to us on. How many of them have you heard reports on? How many of them have you heard any conclusive understanding of? You do recall the shooting incident in Manso? Was Manso...
Manson Quanta.
Brilliant, Manso Quanta. What was the initial report from the police? That people were carrying guns and all of that, they were armed and all of that.
And we had, I remember so well, we had the member of parliament, we had a member of parliament and a chief executive, basically a mayor, say that I know these guys. These guys are not armed robbers. And we had the police
insisting. They even
to
brought,
the regional
in fact, they brought guns, display, to come and show us that these are the things that people were carrying.
And remember the commission of inquiry that was set up there.
Yeah.
It did not connect the guns
to the people in any way. So the disposition of these police officers, and even sometimes their superiors, is to protect them first against the citizens that they are being paid to actually provide service to. What kind of system do you expect out of this one?
Anyway, I'm bringing you in on this point, and I'm going to read a message by Ekunfi Kane. Ekunfi Kane put this on Facebook. He said, with the advancement certificate, I couldn't enter Ghana Armed Forces as a recruit. The same time I applied to the UK Army and got it. With UCC second class upper, Honors BA History, I couldn't enter the BNI. I applied 2 times. I hand-delivered to the BNI commander in Cape Coast in person in his office. With UCC Master Certificate in History, I couldn't enter the BNI. I hand-delivered the application again at the national headquarters at Accra. In all, I refuse to use any protocol or politician because I just don't want to be guilty of doing something I condemn. Double entered national security with phone vending experience.
Yes, and of course, I mean, with 3 weeks training.
And 3 weeks training.
And all of the things.
No, he entered, and then he was trained for 3 weeks after he entered the national security.
Yeah.
So what took him into national security?
Was we don't know.
Any security structure in a state that allows you to prioritize. And again, this system, we have moved beyond the muzzle security structure. It has, in fact, now it's intelligence that's leading security structures across the world.
Yes.
To the extent that perhaps its muzzle might be the main contributing factor, says that you are problematic. But you were saying...
I was saying that, and obviously this is alleged because I don't have any evidence of, but we know that to a large extent the people who are able to get into some of these institutions is really based on who you know, and as long as you fit into the age brackets, the height, whatever it is, and it's who you know when you get in. But Raymond, as you were speaking and I was listening to you, I was thinking that, it's not only the Ghanaian police. So my question is it a human thing in relation to power, or is it just the way we train our police? Because, for example, the United States has one of the best training programs for their police officers, and yet we have them shooting people, killing people who are reaching for their inhalers. We have, violence. I know that it's tinged with racism, and so perhaps it may not be
exactly.
Me and the Ghanaian police, we are all the same color.
No, but it may, But racism is also, even though it's discriminatory, is also an exertion of power when you feel that you're better than someone, when you feel that you can just shoot someone. The systems there are set up better than here, internal affairs and all of that. A lot of their police officers are not being convicted either. My point is that, is it about the way we are training our police? Is it about the quality of people that we're getting in? Or is it that we don't know how to handle the power that comes with being in that position? And if it is that, then the training must be different. It won't just be about skills then. It will be about socializing and taking away the drunkenness of power that makes people act like I can take a life just because.
I mean, there are some compelling arguments, Raymond, for police brutality across the world.
Yes, I get your point. What we are just saying is that, again, if it happens somewhere, if this incident happens somewhere, the people would have been on the street protesting virtually every day until action was done.
But in a lot of cases, still, there's no results because police are covering police. They cover themselves. They hide within themselves.
It's not surprising to have institutions seeking to cover themselves. But ours is of a particular history, moving from a force into a service with the intent to help other people more. The problem is that it looks like the normal disposition of the Ghanaian policeman is not to provide a service. That's what the problem is. So they feel that they have been enabled with enough powers to do the work of the force and not as a service provision institution.
No, they don't see themselves as providing a service at all.
That is what you're saying. With integrity.
Yeah.
Of course, that's
the motto of the police. We can't even move past the service to the integrity.
So that's where the problem is. If they, of course, some will err. We are not saying that. But you say this guy's situation is not markedly different from how the ordinary policeman will treat you on the streets. If you are lucky, he doesn't have a gun. Police people beat up people, they drag people out of cars.
I have a memory that has stayed with me. It's been about 6 or 7 years. Driving over the Achimota overhead. I'm sure I've said this before.
Okay, this has to be your final comment.
And the policeman is talking to a taxi driver. And just as I was passing, the policeman hits the taxi driver with a clipboard. I mean, and I actually heard the taxi driver cry out like, why would you do that? How is it possible that a policeman can take a clipboard to a citizen's head and feel like I am going to physically discipline you for because of where you parked? I mean, how is that happening?
Let's take these messages in.
Okay, this one says they didn't get any community boys to raise hell to get a committee of inquiry to investigate. Some people just got 1.75 million for the recklessness of the police. Yaun Tema says, hello, Dan. We just saw the government pay that 1.75 million to families of people who were said to have been shot illegally by some irresponsible policemen. CBO says this is another clear case. The government must compensate the poor man, too, for the wrongful attack on him. And when will the police investigate this? Call the police to answer us now, please. This injustice and selective compensation must stop. Wrong is wrong. Janet from West Legon says, Daniel, sometimes I wonder if our police force is expected to account for every bullet they use. And if they use it, do they actually follow proper rules of engagement? Are civilians really safe? And is the police really a friend or an enemy?
My real concern is that, so CBO said that the government must compensate Elias, right? And again, we are getting attention for Elias. But what about the hundreds of thousands out there who are also being abused? And we are not hearing their stories, which is why the demand should be for a system that works, a system that is friendly. What are the report systems for average individuals? If you are driving on the street and you see a policeman do something you don't like, or a policeman behaves in a way that you don't like, what phone number can you call?
But Daniel, do you realize the fear here is if you see something and you're going to report it, like Elias did. He was going to the police station, to a perceived safe place, and that is where he got into trouble.
But the question
is, am I even safe when I go there or when I am going to report?
But there are ways of making sure that reports can be made and people don't know who is making the report.
Well, how about if you have to go and make it yourself?
No, anymore. The point is there is always a risk everywhere in all of these decisions.
Which is the point I was making. I'm agreeing with you.
No. All of these decisions that you will make. But you see, if we set up a system to protect people, and you are victimized by a policeman, the policeman who is victimizing you knows that there are consequences. So he will not go ahead and do that. And yes, there may be cases where you may have to go yourself, but just like how Pips has visited this man personally, Pips has visited him, haven't they? Yeah. So there are an agency
But a year
that
later,
deals
there's
with
nothing
people.
that has been done. Nothing has been said.
That is what is wrong, which is what I'm pointing out. So, I mean, yes, so Elias's story is very sad, but there are Eliases out there that we must be just as concerned about, even though we haven't heard their
but
stories.
see, so this is immediate reaction to a single incident and also the bigger problem. The two are not mutually exclusive.
Of course.
Yes.
Which is, I'm not saying I don't think this is a
There's
fact.
action required for this particular one. There's also a bigger system that we ought to work on.
Yeah.
And I don't get the impression, and I'm sitting here today, I can say wholeheartedly that 80% of the recommendations that the National Reconciliation Commission made to the police on restructuring has not been carried out. It tells you that we are not serious about how we want to improve such institutions going forward. We have to only count the bodies later on, count the incidents later on, and use them for nice stories. And later on, the police will come and tell us about how possibly some identified one or two that the media raised are being worked on structurally. They feel that there isn't, and maybe sometimes you also look beyond the police. There's an interior ministry who deals with the budget of the police. Some of these reforms structurally requires money and other things. Are we willing to pump in the right amount of money to deal with these problems in a more sustainable way?
Those are some very good questions, and it's 24 minutes past 8. What we are going to do is we're going to pause on this conversation now, because Jojo will bring us an extended version of this story tomorrow, and then we would continue the discussion. So this is not a discussion that we are dropping. We are definitely continuing it tomorrow, because we are transitioning to another topic that if we don't talk about, we are going to have a bigger problem on our hands than we even think. 52.24% of 2017 WASI candidates passed English language. 2018, 46.79%. That means that for the difference, for the 53% of candidates, they have failed. They have failed WASI. Yeah. Integrated science gives us a bit of a smaller number. 49% of the people failed WASI because they didn't pass integrated science. In earlier years, in 2017, this was a higher number. It was a lower number, that failed the WASI. In mathematics, it is worse. 62% of the candidates of 2018 WASI did not get between grades A1 and C6 in mathematics. In 2017, more than 50% got it. So the question here is that what is happening to our education system? What must we do? We'll try and answer those questions when we come back.
I wake up in the morning, it's a new day, and I got bills that I have to pay. Now you're running late, running out of time.